All right, welcome back, everybody. We are going to jump right back into the second friend of Job now, talking to him about his condition. We left off at chapter 8, so I'm going to jump right in there. We will read through the whole thing fairly quickly, and then afterwards we'll stop, pause, talk about some specific verses if they stick out, and then move on. All right, so chapter 8, we're going to talk to Bildad now. Bildad is interesting. I find he has like an overlying theme of God's will is always just, and we have no place to question it. You know, we can't understand his reasoning. Our lives are so short that we can never gain enough knowledge to understand what the plan actually is. And so that seems to be what tinges his responses a lot here. Then answered Bildad the Shuhite, and said, How long wilt thou speak these things? And how long shall the words of thy mouth be like a strong wind? Doth God pervert judgment, or doth the Almighty pervert justice? If thy children have sinned against him, and he have cast them away for their transgression, if thou wouldest seek unto God betimes, and make thy supplication to the Almighty, if thou wert pure and upright, surely now he would awake for thee, and make the habitation of thy righteousness prosperous. Though the beginning was small, yet thy latter end should greatly increase. For inquire, I pray thee, of the former age, and prepare thyself to the search of their fathers. For we are but of yesterday, and know nothing, because our days upon earth are a shadow. Shall not they teach thee, and tell thee, and utter words out of their heart? Can the rush grow up without mire? Can the flag grow without water? Whilst it is yet in his greenness, and not cut down, it withereth before any other herb. So are the paths of all that forget God, so are the paths of all that forget God, and the hypocrite's hope shall perish. Whose hope shall be cut off, and whose trust shall be a spider's web. He shall lean upon his house, but it shall not stand. He shall hold it fast, but it shall not endure. He is green before the sun, and his branch shooteth forth in his garden. His roots are wrapped about the heap, and seeth the place of stones. If he destroy him from his place, then it shall deny him, saying, I have not seen thee. Behold, this is the joy of his way, and out of the earth shall others grow. Behold, God will not cast away a perfect man, neither will he help the evildoers, till he fill thy mouth with laughing, and thy lips with rejoicing. They that hate thee shall be clothed with shame, and the dwelling place of the wicked shall come to naught. So, all right, so he seems a little less judgmental of Job's person than Eliphaz seemed. He still seems to have kind of a way about him that makes it seem like he knows God's plan better than others. Like he understands God better than Job, but he doesn't seem to be quite as angry and condescending and looking for fault with Job so far. Any particular thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, I mean, right at the beginning, though, he kind of like is again jabbing at Job and thinking, hey, you're in denial, dude, because he says, how long wilt thou speak these things, and how long shall the words of thy mouth be like a strong wind? So he just heard what he told. I'm assuming he heard what he told Eliphaz, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, "You're still in denial." So, I mean, he's coming from that perspective already, which is probably not a good place to start.
And he does have a little bit of judgment here, because in verse 6, if thou wert pure and upright, surely now he would awake for thee, and make the habitation of thy righteousness prosperous. So basically, if you were as good as people thought you were, he would reach down his healing hand now and cure you of these ails. But so maybe you're not quite as righteous as people thought you were, or as you thought yourself were.
Yep.
But I really like about maybe my favorite part of this entire chapter is where he says in verse 9, For we are but of yesterday and know nothing, because our days upon the earth are a shadow. So, as I was saying earlier, Bildad seems to really take this from the human point of view, in that God's playing the long game. we cannot understand what is going on. His total loss plan is, and those that do are folly, because you can never live long enough to learn enough to know what is in God's mind, right? And it's a very elegant way of putting it, because their days upon the earth are a shadow, and it's only a shadow because, like, what is the biblical sense of God's amount of time? 1,000 years is but a day. So your whole life is not even the passing of a day to God. So it could be like a noontime shadow that goes by. I just thought it was kind of an interesting way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, and there's truth to that. I mean, we can't understand everything, because God has it's a being just so much more above what we can comprehend. I don't know even if we were immortal, I don't think we could comprehend it. But certainly it's something that we have to understand the deity of God, so that we understand that he's on a different level than we are. And in that regard, I agree with him there. But why is he saying this? Is he saying, oh, well, it's maybe something that you didn't realize happened to you, or, God knows best, so something must have happened. What good is this doing to Job? I don't get it.
Yeah. It's really something when you think about it, because really Job himself doesn't know why this is happening to him. Mm-hmm. And it's just to have these, with friends like these kind of things, because
that's where this comes
from. Job himself.
Friends like these, yep, that's right.
Job himself didn't have the understanding of why this is happening. He didn't know either.
Yeah. Well, this brings up the question of faith here. Faith is believing something you can't see and then acting upon that faith, And I'm sure I started with you guys real quick. When my sister was about 15, 16 years old, she was really, really sick. When she was 12, we went out on vacation. I remember just watching her. We were walking down the street, and she put her hand on her heart, and she leaned up against the wall, and all of a sudden, that was the beginning of a life full of health problems. And she had leukemia for a while. She has lupus, which is an autoimmune disease where your body attacks itself, right? And she's been in and out of the hospital, and gone through a lot of things. And I've actually seen her in the hospital flatline a few times, thinking, I'm going to lose my sister. So I remember one day just my whole family's talking, and I went to my mom and I'm like, it's because you don't have enough faith. The reason she's like this is because we don't have enough faith. And I was kind of accusatory. And so my mom, in her wisdom, says, come with me. And I was probably about 12 years old at the time. So she takes me out to the front yard and she says, I want you to tell me if you have enough faith to lift our house off of the foundation. And I said, I do have enough faith. And guys, I can tell you right now, I could feel my 12-year-old self. I believed with all of my heart I could lift my house off of that foundation. And my mom says, I believe that you believe that, but let me teach you a lesson. Go over there and lift the house. With all the faith that you have, lift the house off the foundation. So I remember being 12 and kneeling down and knowing I was going to lift the house. I just felt it with my whole soul that I could do it. And I strained and I strained and I strained and I strained and I broke down crying because I didn't understand why I could not lift the house. And so my mom came over to me and she hugged me and she told me, part of faith is believing, which you have plenty of it. You believe. But the biggest part about faith is taking your belief and aligning it with God and having faith that he knows what he's doing and that you need to trust him. I don't doubt, son, that if God came down and said, Matt, lift that house because there's a reason I need you to do it, then because of your faith, you would lift that house. But God doesn't need the house lifted. It would destroy the home. It would fall apart. It would be for naught. And so I remember just that whole thing has always been stuck in my mind. And every time something's happened where I thought, if I had more faith, I realized, wait a second, true faith is aligning my will with God. and being able to trust him that he is perfect, omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, and any omni that you can think of, he is. And he's
Alpha
gonna
and
do.
Omega.
He's always gonna do what's right. Always gonna do the best. That's
Mhm.
right. And when I trust in him, then my faith isn't let down, and my faith isn't vain. And I kind of think that with Job. I think Job trusts in God, and his friends are forgetting that God is in charge, and that there's more than what they're just seeing.
And thanks for sharing that story with us, Matt. I mean, it's always great to hear about when people come together in faith and just trust in the Lord and good things happen. You know, and it's not always the answer you might think you want. You know what I mean? So in your case, it turned out well. Thank God and all. But yeah, so I just love to hear stories like that from people. And you know, if you have a story like that you want to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. We'd love to talk about it with you. And just remember, you know, no problem is too small for God. No problem is too big for God. So, you know, pose him your questions and pray to him, and, you know, you too shall be delivered, if nothing else, in comfort. So let's go ahead and continue on here with Job's rebuttal now of Bildad. We are now in chapter 9. So here we go. Then Job answered and said, I know it is so of a truth, but how should man be just with God? There's one to start off with. If he will contend with him, he cannot answer him 1 of 1,000. He is wise in heart and mighty in strength, who hath hardened himself against him, and hath prospered? Which removeth the mountains, and they know not, which overturneth them in his anger, which shaketh the earth out of her place, and the pillars thereof tremble, which commandeth the sun, and it riseth not, and sealeth up the stars, which alone spreadeth out the heavens, and treadeth upon the waves of the sea, which make Arcturus, Orion, and Pleiades, and the chambers of the south, which doeth great things past finding out, yea, and wonders without number. Lo, he goeth by me, and I see him not. He passeth on also, and I perceive him not. Behold, he taketh away. Who can hinder him? Who will say unto him, What doest thou? If God will not withdraw his anger, the proud helpers do stoop under him. How much less shall I answer him, and choose out my words to reason with him? Whom, though I were righteous, yet would I not answer, but I would make supplication to my judge. If I had called, and he had answered me, yet would I not believe that he had hearkened unto my voice? For he breaketh me with a tempest, and multiplieth my wounds without cause. He will not suffer me to take my breath, but filleth me with bitterness. If I speak of strength, lo, he is strong, and if of judgment, who shall set me a time to plead? If I justify myself, mine own mouth shall condemn me. If I say, I am perfect, it shall also prove me perverse. Though I were perfect, yet would I not know my soul. I would despise my life. Yeah, that's a good one. We'll talk about that one some more. This is one thing, therefore I said it. He destroyeth the perfect and the wicked. If the scourge slay suddenly, he laugh at the trial of the innocent. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? Now my days are swifter than a post. They flee away, they see no good. They are passed away as the swift ships, as the eagle that hasteth to the prey. If I say, I will forgive my complaint, I will leave off my heaviness and comfort myself. I am afraid of all my sorrows. I know that thou wilt not hold me innocent. If I be wicked, why then labor I in vain? If I wash myself with snow water, and make my hands never so clean, yet shalt thou plunge me into the ditch, and mine own clothes shall abhor me. For he is not a man, as I am, that I should answer him, and we should come together in judgment. Neither is there any daysman betwixt us, that might lay his hand upon us both. Let him take his rod away from me, and let not his fear terrify me. Then would I speak, and not fear him, but it is not so with me. So, yeah, we're getting down to a little more depths of despair here too. Right off the bat, in chapter or verse 2, when he says, then Job answered and said, I know it is so of a truth, but how should man be just with God? So it's kind of hard because, once again, you have to know the mind of God, and how can I be completely just and righteous before God if I can't know him? I'm just a man, It's an interesting question, and one he's probably never thought of before, right? Because he's lived a charmed life most of his life. It seemed like the blessing of God was always upon him, and now it's suddenly gone, and he doesn't know why. So how do I know the mind of the person or the entity that would do this to me, if that is who's doing this to me? So, thoughts, discussion, guys?
Again, it's the insensitivity is sort of coming out a little bit here too. Maybe he's not being quite as aggressive as Eliphaz, but in the end, he's not being sympathetic really here. He's giving us circumstances that could occur, that or hypothetical, shall we say? But again, he's not what Job needs here. There's still. It seems to me he's still saying, "Hey, something happened here. We can't understand it. We know that Job is righteous because God told us, but Bildad doesn't know that." And again, he's sort of recounting these things as if they applied to Job, and most of them don't. And again, that's the fallacy here in what these two friends have come forward, is that they're not giving Job what he needs. They're giving what they think he needs.
And remember, this is Job answering right now, so in the last chapter. But
yeah.
So it's kind of interesting too. In verse 12, he says, "Behold, he taketh away. Who can hinder him? Who will say unto him, What doest thou?" So once again, he's like, God has no referee. He has no one who can and tell him what to do. Who can stop him? And if he's the one putting these evils on me, no one can do it. So basically, it's God's providence and his purview to do these things to me. And small creatures like ourselves just can't do anything about it. It's kind of a despairing thing, He feels helpless before God at this point, I'd say. And in 20, though, here's a little bit of self-reflection. If I justify my own mouth will condemn me, and if I say I am perfect, it shall also prove me perverse. So he's still self-aware enough to know, hey, I can't claim I'm a perfect man. I can't complain my life had no sin in it, or I can't say that it was the way. I can't say that I know God, because if I did so, or in case I don't know God's mind, that would make me, basically a liar. I would be sinning by saying such a thing, because, no one is perfect. And, it's said he was a perfect and upright man. As far as the earth goes, he still wasn't perfect, And then, but I love what he says in 21 here. Though I were perfect, yet would I not know my soul, I would despise my life. So here he is saying, if I was perfectly righteous according to the world, if I was pure of heart and clean of mind, but I had no soul behind it, I had nothing to aspire to, I would despise myself, So I would rather be fallible, but still struggle to maintain my goodness and my love of God, than to just have it graced upon me, but have no real meaning behind it. It's kind of a weird way of looking at it, but I just thought that was interesting how he put that.
Yeah. I think that goes back to Job himself not really understanding the situation of why this is happening, why God's allowing it to happen. But it's like, even through all this, he's questioning, but he's not blaming God for it. I think that speaks volumes. And for Job himself where was it? In verse 20, if I justify myself, mine own mouth condemn me if I say that I'm perfect. So as upright and as righteous as Job was, he never thought of himself as perfect. which again, it speaks volumes about him, because he knew that was like an ego thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good
He
point.
still strived to be better even before all this was happening.
All right, and he carries on a little bit here in 10. I'll go ahead and move on to 10, and we'll wrap up Bildad's section here. Excuse me. My soul is weary of my life. I will leave my complaint upon myself. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul. I will say unto God, do not condemn me. Shew me wherefore thou contendest with me. Is it good unto thee that thou shouldest oppress, that thou shouldest despise the work of thine hands, and shine upon the counsel of the wicked? Hast thou eyes of flesh, or seest thou as man seeth? Are thy days as the days of a man? Are thy years as a man's days? That thou inquirest after mine iniquity, that searchest after my sin. Thou knowest that I am not wicked, that there is none that can deliver out of thine hand. Thine hands have made me and fashioned me together round about, yet thou dost destroy me. Remember, I beseech thee, that thou hast made me as the clay, and wilt thou bring me into dust again? Hast thou not poured me out as milk, and curdled me like cheese? Thou hast clothed me with skin and flesh, and hast fenced me with bones and sinews. Thou hast granted me life and favor, and thy visitation hath preserved my spirit. And these things hast thou hid in thine heart. I know that this is with thee. If I sin, then thou markest me, and thou wilt not acquit me from mine iniquity. If I be wicked, woe unto me, and if I be righteous, yet will I not lift up my head. I am full of confusion, therefore see thou mine affliction. For it increaseth. Thou huntest me as a fierce lion, and again thou shewest thyself marvelous upon me. Thou renewest thy witness against me, and increaseth thine indignation upon me. Changes in war are against me. Wherefore then hast thou brought me forth out of the womb? Oh, and I had given up the ghost, and no eye had seen me. I should have been as though I had not been. I should have been carried from the womb to the grave. Are not my days few? Cease then, and let me alone, that I may take comfort a little. Before I go whence, I shall not return, even to the land of darkness and the shadow of death. A land of darkness as darkness itself, and out of the shadow of death, without any order, and where the light is as darkness. So yeah, I mean, he kicks it right off with the very first verse, my soul is weary of my life, and I will leave my complaint upon myself. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul. So yeah, he just can't take this anymore. It's so horrible at this point, and that makes anybody kind of start giving up. They just want to give up, and the only thing he has to look forward to is death. And maybe his friends are now starting to realize this somewhat in some way. It's hard to tell. We'll find out maybe a little more insofar, but I mean, what are your thoughts, guys?
I like that he's figuring out things as he's speaking, because there's themes that carry over from the first friend to the second friend and definitely to the third friend, because I've been prepared for that and I'm seeing this theme, Back in verse 9, he says, verse 22, in chapter 9, verse 22, this one thing, therefore I said it, he destroyeth the perfect and the wicked.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a theme that comes later, where we talk a lot about how God blesses both the wicked and the righteous, and he destroys both the wicked and the righteous,
Just look at the line of David and the kings.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yep. But I'm seeing him asking these questions and thinking it through as he's responding to his friends, and he's actually coming to conclusion. He's learning from this process, and I really like that.
Yeah, you're right. It's almost like there's another progression here, where he's like, as he's talking, you're right. He's like growing, like he says here in 23, if the scourge slay suddenly, God, he will mock and try the innocent here. I'm not sure if I'm reading the right version there. I'm sorry, but again, he's sort of trying to recognize, hey, is this it's not all retribution stuff here, but that does exist. There's more than one possibility here, and so he's trying to work through it, like Matt said, and figure out what it is. He's not cursing God, but he's really at this point, I think he's really so focused on trying to find a resolution to his situation, and I don't know if it was the friend that Bildad that kind of brought this, since he was talking so much about philosophical and what God has, the attributes of God, or what. But you're right. It's like now it's like he just wants this to end, like David was saying. But even more than that, he wants to understand. He sees that there has to be something here that he's missing, and he's trying to find what that is.
Yep, agree.
Yeah, I think there's definitely agree with Roger on that. Job just trying to figure out as he goes along, because I mean, who among us as a people could survive this and keep going, realistically speaking, as long as Job did, and still not give up, not curse God, not die, to have that spirit still deep within going through all this, even though like in verse 22 where it said, a land of darkness is darkness itself, and of the shadow of death without any order, and where the light itself is as darkness. That verse, it speaks to me, because I've been in that dark place before where even the light seems as darkness. And Job being there in that darkness and still not giving up, it's powerful.
And see, I think what's really important about chapters like this and basically what he's going through with his friends here is that we were told right at the beginning that Job was a righteous man. So you got to imagine his faith runs extremely deep within him. So deep, probably more than anyone else on the planet, right? He did everything he could to please God and to be a good man, from what we've read. Even he can question his faith. So I think that's a good message to those out there who may not have faith as strong as his, or if you are a little bit lackadaisical in your faith. It's like even the strong can question their faith, and so it's not, you don't have to look upon yourself with shame that you do that from time to time, but just don't jump to conclusions because you're going through a bad time. You know what I mean? So I think it's good that they gave us an example here of, even the mighty can fall, at least when it comes to spirituality. So just got to persevere. And if nothing else, the story teaches you to persevere in your faith, because we see what happens at the end of it. And you're definitely encouraged to read ahead because it's got a great ending. I love the ending of this book. But so you're not alone. If you think you're the only person who's ever questioned their faith, you're not alone. It happens to all of us, and you need to be strong enough to admit
absolutely,
that.
Absolutely, yeah. Even going through any kind of storm, just keeping the faith and knowing that God is still there is the key to going through it.
I mean, the disciples showed fear. They didn't want to sink in the ship when they were crossing the sea, and Jesus chastised them as like, how weak is your faith? These are the disciples. They are at the right hand of Jesus himself, right? So even the people in strong conviction can have moments of doubt. So I think Job is a great teacher, is just to hold on to it. And even if you have those doubts and questions in your mind, just keep asking them. But just don't give up. Don't give up your faith. That's the one thing.
And he definitely has doubts here, because he's talking about, like, in verse 24, the earth is given. Well, I guess it's more of a complaint, maybe. I don't really know how to read this per se, but it says, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? So he's like, oh, man, terrible things are happening. Wicked people are just flourishing, and this is happening to me. If not because I'm wicked, then why is it happening? Yeah. So again, he's like Matt was saying, he needs answers at this point. He's just totally confused, and at this point he's not questioning God per se, but he's wondering why God allows this, I guess, is what the best way I can put it. He's not questioning, but he's like, I need an answer. I mean, he is questioning, but not in the way that perhaps we're thinking. He's not saying you did wrong. He's saying he wants to know why this is occurring. When he sees all these other things of people that are wicked and nothing happens to them, or supposedly, and yet he didn't do anything wrong. So why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
At this point, he wants to know. Yeah, he's had enough. He wants to know from God, hey, why is this happening to me? I think. I mean, unless you guys read this differently.
I agree. One thing I love about the scriptures is that there are many of them, and they make a complete picture. So a lot of times I see people that don't believe as we believe. They'll try to use a scripture against me and say, well, your scripture says this. So, but you can go to many scriptures and put them all together, and then you get the whole picture, Yep. And one scripture that just popped in my mind right now is Malachi 3, 16 and 17. And it's talking about the wicked prospering. But I just want to read it to you guys really quick because it popped in my head. Then they that feared the Lord spake often one to another, and the Lord hearkened and heard it. And a book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared the Lord and that thought upon his name. And they shall be mine, saith the Lord of hosts, in that day when I make up my jewels, and I will spare them as a man spareth his own son that serveth him. And the whole purpose of that scripture was that a lot of times the righteous look and say, man, the wicked, they look happy. They got everything. They're blessed. And I'm over here being righteous, and I'm going through the hardest time, right?
Yeah.
But then the Lord tells them, yeah, but I'm remembering that book. I'm writing you in that book. And when the time comes, you will be my jewels, And so whenever I get that attitude of, man, I'm doing everything you're asking, and yet I'm going through some things, I remember this. And it gives me power to continue to endure to the end, because I want to be the jewels in his hand. I want to see him, and I want him to look at me and say, well done, thou good and faithful servant,
It's like, well, as an example, like you said, seeing somebody that might be not living a righteous life or living a wicked life, and seeing them have like money, cars, houses, all this on the outside, and you just think, why? But you as a person can't see the inside to their heart, what turmoil they might be living with.
That's true.
Because they don't have God. It's like for instance, I read an article that many comedians suffer from depression.
Yeah.
It just, you don't know what their life is like behind closed doors. You see all the fame, the money, the cars, but inside they're miserable.
Yeah.
And
Good point. The things of the world cannot fill the hole that God has for us. In other words, that there's only one thing that can fill that, and you can fill it with all kinds of things, and then you'll want more things to think that you can fill it with. But these are material things, and God doesn't work in the material world. He works in the spiritual realm, and that is where you have to fill it with the Spirit of God, not anything else.
Well, I think about this pencil, right? There's a purpose for its creation. And if I were to try to go sit on this and have it drive me over to Target so I can get some groceries, this is not going to fulfill that. You know what I'm saying? We are a creation of God that was made for a specific purpose. And if we don't fulfill that purpose, there will always be a void. And so we have to, part of what we're doing, and us men seeking wisdom, we're trying to find out what our purpose is and live in a way that we fulfill that purpose.
Amen.
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
and many of people out there who, might live what is called a sinful life out there, they may even be happy. They may be happy their entire life. They may be blessed and charmed, not so much blessed, but, blessed with good luck. And they may think they're happy, and that's all well and good, but, you don't live very long on this earth. Your days are like a shadow upon the earth, right? That happiness is fleeting. If you want to think a little bit beyond there, I'll take eternity any day over 80 years of happiness on this earth, because I'm happy anyway, for the most part. I don't have a lot, but I have what I need. And so it helps put things in perspective, So we're going to be moving on to Zophar in the next segment, so stay tuned for that, and we'll see you shortly.